Everyone, welcome to Locked On Lakers for Friday. Brian Kamenetsky, Andy Kamenetsky. Is Andy being unfair to Austin Reaves, setting too high a bar for the season? We'll get into it next.
You are Locked On Lakers, your daily Los Angeles Lakers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks to everybody for making Locked On Lakers your first listen of every day, Monday through Friday, no matter how or where you get your podcasts. It's always free and never behind a paywall. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out with over 25,000 subscribers to the channel, many of whom, Andy, saw the show on Thursday and said nice points about Max Christie, clever insights. I learned a lot, but man alive, Andy Kamenetsky hates Austin Reaves and being incredibly unfair to him after that discussion. Reaves, who was just kind of, I don't know, I would say tangentially part of the conversation, at least up until the end there, where we got into expectations and guys with something to prove for the year. And when it's all said and done, and I'll let you unpack it, Andy, people thought you were being unfair.
Yeah, and this is something that's actually come up on a few different occasions. And as always, we appreciate people leaving the comments, hitting us up on Twitter, however you're communicating with us, even if you're disagreeing, especially if you're disagreeing. I prefer the ones where you're telling Andy that he's wrong. Yeah, absolutely. Bring it on. But this was, for those who missed Thursday's show, the context was we were talking about Max Christie, who talked up both the coaching staff for the Lakers and like their fiery demeanor and the way that they were approaching the season, but also the way Max Christie himself was approaching the season. And it was very clear that he pictured himself having a larger role this season and deserving a larger role this season. And now it's just on him to make good on it. And this was tied to I guess it was a mailbag that Dan Wojcicki had from the LA Times, or his newsletter, that everybody should subscribe to. Dan does a great job covering the Lakers. And Dan had a piece about 3 Lakers under particular scrutiny this upcoming season. Max Christie was number 1, but number 3 was Austin Reaves. And Dan pointed out something that I've also noted on several occasions, that Austin Reaves, while a very good player, is somebody that has been treated as pretty close to untouchable by the Lakers. And if Austin Reaves, who is, again, very good, does not bring his game up to another level, reach another level as a player that is, if not definitively an all-star, I think pretty close, all-star adjacent, all-star level player, there's going to be, I think, a growing consensus that the Lakers have perhaps been to coveting, for lack of a better word, of Austin Reaves in terms of potential deals that they've left on the table. And saw a few comments, Luis Nash, Dat Cooley, 619. I can't read the comments themselves because they were long, but the gist of both of them got into the idea that I was being unfair to Reaves in talking about the need for him specifically to operate as the third best player on, need to be good enough to be considered the third best player on a legit contending team, as unfair to Reaves, because Reaves only makes $12 million a year, and that isn't what you would expect from a $12 million player. And I'll read what I responded to them. You can also see this in the comments section, but to me, that may be true, that, that's less than what third best players typically make, but I think it's the wrong way to frame the problem. Like, putting aside that was the max the Lakers could pay him by CBA rules because of restricted free agency, right, as opposed to them negotiating this down. If the going rate, because somebody put out an offer sheet for Austin Reaves, had been $22 million a year, I promise you the Lakers would have been paying Austin Reaves $22 million a year. This was a league function, not a Lakers function. But what I'm talking about is opportunity cost, because the Lakers began last season very clearly with the expectation that Reaves would perform at the level of a typical contender's third best player. And it shaped how they built the roster. And he did not meet that expectation. Maybe he will this season if he does.
Particularly early. I mean, I think by the end of the year, Reaves was playing, I thought, pretty well. Like,
he was playing pretty well.
And he was sort of playing more or less like you would expect Austin Reaves play. But I mean, one of the things that I don't think, and I will say this, I don't think he advanced necessarily. He reached the same level, but particularly early in the season, he was way below the level.
Sure.
And the ripple effect of that, of Reaves not meeting expectations, was at the root of a lot of things that were going on with the Lakers and their inability to settle on a rotation. A lot of that stemmed from feeling like you had to remove Reaves as a starter. And so now I pointed that out, just like, not only was he not making a leap, he wasn't even close to meeting his own standard for the first 35 games of the season or whatever.
Sure. And that is true, but I'm also, for the sake of this conversation, I'm even willing to look past that. I'm talking about the best version of Austin Reaves. I don't think was at the level that the Lakers had slated him to be at. And like, so it's clear that's not even a knock on Reaves. Like, to be the third best player on a legit championship caliber team, like, we're talking about a top 50-ish player, which most players around the league, even really good ones, are not capable of being. But if the Lakers still treat him as virtually untouchable for potential deals, then they may be cutting off avenues to actually get that third best player or take the team where it needs to go, because he is their best trade asset by a pretty wide margin. So, like you had mentioned earlier, like the idea of, did I set the bar too high for Austin Reaves? The issue isn't that I set it too high. I think the Lakers may have set it too high. And you start reaching a point where Austin Reaves, he is absolutely a bargain for his contract. Like, his production is incredible for his deal, but you don't get extra points on the court for bang for the buck. So, like, people need to understand, this isn't a question of me being down on Austin Reaves. He's a really good player. And if you're asking me, do I think Austin Reaves can be an important rotation player on a championship caliber team? The answer is yes. Like, unqualified, no caveats, yes. But if you're asking me if I think Austin Reaves is as good as he needs to be for the current construction of this roster, the answer so far is no. But again, that's not a knock on Reaves. That's an issue with the roster and also how the Lakers treat Reaves in the way they go about or don't go about improving the roster.
It's interesting because, I don't want to say that Reaves, we'll talk more about this in the next segment, but like, I don't want to come off and saying that Reaves was bad last year, because again, I don't think he was. And I think by the end of the year, second half of the season, heading into the playoffs, he was more or less the guy that the Lakers expected him to be.
Well, he's more the player I expected him to be.
Okay,
I don't know if I don't think he was the player the Lakers expected him
or
to
at the very least was meeting the expectations of like the bar that he had set. He had, at the very least, he was playing at the level that he had set from the previous season. If you look at his per 36 numbers, because obviously, you can't just compare stats straight up. And even, this is not a perfect representation just because the role changed and, his responsibilities changed. Lakers certainly were asking him to do more. And
they're going to be asking him likely to do more this season.
His per 36 numbers, points went up, assists went up drastically, rebounds went up. What's interesting is what went down. And his free throw rate went down pretty significantly from over 5 to under 4 free throw attempts per 36 minutes. And his efficiency went down significantly from, his field goal percentage going down from over 50% to under 40, under 49. And then, his 3-point percentage dropping as well. Like, some of these things you expect, and maybe expecting Reaves to shoot 53% again was not fair. And, he shot almost 49% from the floor, which is still pretty good. So he's an interesting player to me. I want to kind of stay on this and like how the experience of last season, I think could boost Reaves a lot for this year. And I want to explain why next.
Locked On Lakers is brought to you by FanDuel. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, but we got something a little different for you now through September 22nd, which is really close. That's 2 days from now. All FanDuel customers, you bet just $5 and you get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And then with the YouTube TV base plan, you're going to be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment. You can sign up anytime. And while you start getting ready to sign up, you can also think about the 24-25 odds for the upcoming NBA season. Our friends at FanDuel, as of this recording, Lakers 35-1 to win the title. Anthony Davis 150-1 for MVP, also 25-1 for Defensive Player of the Year. Dalton Knecht 10-1 for Rookie of the Year. Max Christie 150-1 for Most Improved Player. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to download America's #1 sportsbook.
So last season, Andy, was an interesting one for Reaves. And it's one of those things where, when you start to break it down, you can kind of see why it might have been a struggle for him. Like go back 2 years. And the big struggle for Reaves was the jump from, 23 minutes a game to 28. And like, that was a pretty backloaded 23. Like he suddenly was playing a lot of minutes, a lot of high leverage minutes in his second season. And he kind of hit the wall about 3/4 of the way through the season. And we were both, I remember doing shows like, I hope he can recover before the playoffs start. Like, because, 3/4 of the way through the season, he legit hit a wall and was not playing well. And he did.
He actually hit the wall again briefly, I think, during the Warriors series, and then got his
overall
got his bearings back
in time to play, and he played well in the playoffs that year.
Sure.
Last year, so he goes through that experience. He plays more minutes, more high leverage minutes at the NBA level than he ever had. Finishes that, goes to the Western Conference Finals, finishes that, rolls straight into Team USA. Has the Team USA experience very beneficial to him, playing with the best players in America. Some of those guys ended up on the regular Olympic team, and Reaves was one of the more effective players on that squad. And like, it was part of the reason I think the expectations for Reaves going into last year were so high, is everybody saw him in that World Cup experience and was like, damn, like this guy's really poised to do something really special. And so you put that in there, and he comes and he gets to camp and he's exhausted. And not only is he tired, but now he's like, so 2 years ago it was play more minutes. Last year was play more minutes again. His minutes went up, and he was, to be fair, the only guy who played in all 82 for the Lakers. I mean, he was there every game, literally. And he even then jumped up 3 minutes a game from about 29 to over 32 a game. So he's being asked to do more in those games. So I think in terms of trying to decide, like, what is Reaves going to give you this season? If this were like a fantasy basketball thing, I would put him on my list of potential breakout kind of sleepers, because now he's had the year. What he's going to be expected to do this year is going to be much, much closer to what he was expected to do last year. He has now done it. He's gone through the experience, and I think he will be better prepared for it this year, both because he knows what it is and because he's not playing international basketball this summer. So the Lakers need him to make a leap. He could. The circumstances will be better for him to do it this year than they were last year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he keeps getting more experience. He keeps learning more about what this life is in the NBA. And, to reiterate, I don't think Austin Reaves had a bad season last year. I think he had a bad start to the season. Then he recovered and he played he played at an acceptable level, judging him in a vacuum against himself. Like Austin Reaves, this is the point that I think makes this, it's nuanced and it can be complicated. And sometimes it will strike people as either crapping on Reaves or being down on him or like looking to like nitpick at him. And I'm not. Like, he is a good player, full stop. The problem is, for I think the way this roster is constructed and also the way the Lakers pictured him beginning last year when he was getting big three photo treatment with LeBron and Anthony Davis. Like, this wasn't just about marketing popular player Austin Reaves. This was, I think, how they saw him. I think this is how they saw the team forming. And again, that gets borne out by how pretty close to untouchable he's been treated on this team. Like, I had made a comparison to Jonathan Kuminga with the Warriors, and someone, it might have been Dak Cooley, in the comments section, pointed out that Kuminga was looking to make 20-something mil a year from the Warriors, and I'm like, the money isn't the point. And to be honest, I think Reaves is a better player than Kuminga. My point is the potential opportunity costs when you treat a player as off the table as the Lakers have with Reaves or the Warriors have with Kuminga, because Reaves may really be the best avenue the Lakers have towards making the type of move that I know a lot of fans want to see them make, because D'Lo, Rui, Vando, Vincent, even someone like Dalton Connect, who is, I think, very intriguing, but he doesn't really even make enough money to be, an impact move by himself. Those other guys are considered somewhere between neutral and negative. They require you to attach assets that, even if you don't like the picks, that even if you don't care about those picks as picks, you need them to make deals. And you can only, as you like to say, you can only trade them once. So if Reaves is treated as really untouchable, it means he has to step up his game, because he has to become, in a lot of ways, the player the Lakers won't trade him to get.
I think that's important. And I also just think when you look at the construction of the team, it doesn't have to be just him. Like, not every roster is star A, star B, supporting player A. Like, there are versions of this where, you have one star and maybe kind of a B player, and a lot of guys would just fit really well together, or whatever it might be. But the way the roster is constructed, if you're like, you do need any team that's going to play, like, you need a certain level of talent. Like, you gotta be at least this tall, and you can't just be your stars who do it. Like, they just need Reaves to be better because there's no one really else to do it. I think there is like Max Christie is somebody who I think they expect to play more and be better this year. They do not expect him to be, a 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 in the rotation. Like, you look at it like that, like, reliably, this guy is like the 5th best player in the rotation. That's too big of a leap, I think, to put on Christie. I wonder how much more upside they see in Rui. I think for the Lakers, like, would repeating last year in terms of the outside, the consistency of the outside shot, the pretty reliable scoring, occasional upticks and rebounding or something like that the way he played once he was in the starting lineup and knew he wasn't leaving it. Like, can you do that twice? Okay, now you've been given a regular role. Can you do that? Can you repeat that? I think that's a fair bar for Rui. Hopefully there's some improvement, but I don't know how much better he's going to get defensively, for example. You start going through, like, D'Lo is D'Lo. And you either
D'Lo had a career year last year. I mean, D'Lo likely can't get any better than he was last year. Period. I mean, this is as good as he's been in his career, and I think it's like year 10.
That's my point. But like, this is he is who he is. Like, there's no like remaining upside, and a lot of people don't like D'Lo we live on D'Lo Island and at least recognize the value of it. But like, you don't look at D'Lo as an upside player anymore.
No,
we don't quite know what Dalton Connect is, but again, top 3, top 4, top 5 in your rotation, too high of an expectation for a rookie, even a polished offensive player coming out of college. Like, you start going through all of it. It's got to be Reaves. If it's not going to be Reaves, it's not going to be anybody. And so we're not talking about 30% better, 50% better. He needs to be 15% better consistently across the board. As a player, as a defensive player, as an offensive player, the efficiency needs to go back up a little bit. The trips to the free throw line need to go back. I think the league and referees maybe caught up a little bit, and we're like, yeah, we're not giving you that quite.
The emphasis on calling less really hurts a player like Reaves.
Yeah. So I don't think it's unfair, and I don't think you were putting something on him. This is just the way the Lakers are set up, and Reaves can have a really good year, and the Lakers could fall short of it because he doesn't quite reach this bar. And that's not really Reeves's fault. It's Rob's fault.
Yes.
But it still doesn't change the fact that if it's not going to be Reaves, it's probably not going to be anybody. They have to fill that hole somewhere else. And they'd probably fill it with somebody that they would acquire by trading Austin Reaves.
That's, again, my point. I did not set this bar for Austin Reaves. The Lakers did. I'm just going off what is clearly their blueprint. I'm not the one who created the blueprint. I just know how to read it.
Yeah. So JJ Redick, when is he going to put Bron and Bronny on the floor? One expert has a prediction in that regard, and we have one more piece of mail that we'd like to get to from earlier in the week. All of that next. So we got this, Andy, from Arch Journey 2487. Apologies, don't want to get the wrong Arch Journey on the YouTube page. He had when we did the Christian Coloco scouting report, we obviously talked about Christian Wood. He says this about that episode, because we talked a lot about how some of this is just placeholding until Christian Wood gets healthy, like what the Lakers do with the 3 centers that they have. Until Wood is healthy, wow, there's like 6 W's. So Wood is now a difference maker. Lakers' problem is not letting their rookies play in valuable minutes every regular season game so they can build their confidence on an NBA level and not these G League bleeps. He talks about Derek Lively and talks about other stuff. But basically kind of mocking the idea of treating Christian Wood as a difference maker. The reason I wanted to bring this up is it's similar a little bit to the discussion we just had about Reaves. Would I want to necessarily rely on Wood to be the difference maker in my rotation, my front court rotation, in terms of slotting guys and having an opportunity to elevate it over last year? Not particularly. I don't know. I don't. But the Lakers have given us no other option here. And if you look at the players that they have, Hayes, Castleton on a 2-way, now Coloco on a 2-way. Those 3 guys are all extremely limited and have major deficiencies that would make it hard to play any of them for more than 10 or 12 minutes at a time, like in a game. Wood has some deficiencies, but is much, much more capable and much easier to put on the floor in a 25-minute-a-night role. So, yeah, he is a difference maker, whether you want him to be that guy or not. This is the roster the Lakers have given themselves to work with. And in that context, there is nobody in terms of front court reserves that has the potential to change the dynamic of what the Lakers are doing with and behind Anthony Davis more than a healthy and potentially productive Christian Wood. Doesn't mean I like it, but that's the reality.
Yeah, I would say that even if someone wanted to, quibble with the use of difference maker, which, to be clear, we never actually phrased it like that or called Christian Wood.
No, but I mean, I did make it pretty. I understand why he framed it that way, because I made it pretty clear. Like, when a lot of this is predicated on what do you do until Wood comes back, because when Wood is available, theoretically, you're no longer trying to mix and match quite as much between Koloko, Castleton, and Hayes for whatever minutes you can kind of cobble together, because the hope is Wood can fill that. So I understand why our friend here, Arch Journey, framed it that way. I don't think it's unfair.
Well, what I was going to say is, even if you think that's too strong a wording, or you think that's a ridiculous concept, like, that's fine. The difference, though, what I would say in terms of Wood versus the other guys that we're talking about, because I actually am bullish at the concept, at least the idea that if you are looking for a backup center to do a very specific thing for 10 to 12 minutes max, Christian Koloko could potentially be that guy, which makes him, I guess if you want to call him an answer, he is an answer to a very specific, narrow problem. Like, hopefully he can come in, be a defensive center for 10 to 12 minutes, fill a very narrow but still important lane need, and that's it. And you could say possibly the same with Jackson Hayes. You could potentially say the same with Colin Castleton. The difference, though, I think, between Wood and those other guys is Wood is the only one that you can really picture doing more than that. Like, the idea of, the guy that can play alongside Anthony Davis. What you're saying there is the guy that can play 20 plus minutes, because the minutes that you're playing alongside AD also have to come with the minutes that you're relieving AD, because AD is not going to play 48 minutes. Christian Wood is the only guy that you can picture playing 20 plus minutes of all those guys, which makes him, if nothing else, if you think difference maker is too strong, he's at least different than all the others. Like, he is in his own category of guys who could be backing up Anthony Davis, because he's the only one you can picture playing 20 plus minutes. I don't think he's likely to, but he's the only one you can picture it.
Yeah, no, it's a good way of putting it. So I want to bring that up again. We always appreciate when people leave questions and leave comments, because they add a ton to the show. So thank you for doing that. One of the big things I think people are looking forward to, I think some for the history and some actually because they're worried it could be become a thing like this. Like, what are the Lakers going to do with Bron and Bronny? Like, what is that going to look like? Are they going to try to force feed the two of them on the floor together? Is Bronny going to be playing more games with the grown-up Lakers as opposed to playing at South Bay? Like, what is this going to look like? And to that degree, Zach Lowe at ESPN predicted that Bron and Bronny will get their moment together, their first time playing together, opening night against the Timberwolves. Quote, he's 100% playing in the opening game so they can have a moment together. That's going to happen. So they pass to each other, or whatever it ends up being. And, you can tell, like, just from the tone of the quote too, it's like, whatever this is, so they can, like, the Lakers can put on their show, like, get over. But like, I thought the idea of it happening as early as possible, which is something that I was saying, they would need to do a little while ago, and basically let him have it so then he can go to the G League and we don't see him again for the rest of the year, so he can go learn to be hopefully a better potential NBA player. It was interesting for me to see Zach echo that and even say they're going to try to do it on opening night to get it out of the way.
Yeah, I believe he said this on Bill Simmons' podcast. I hope Zach is right for the reasons we talked about. Like, I think it is better for everybody involved, the Lakers, LeBron, Bronny, to not have this be a story that hangs over the team, something that they get asked about a lot. Get it out of the way. Let LeBron and Bronny have this moment that, I know, as manufactured as it will both feel and, in all honesty, it's going to mean a lot to them for very sincere, genuine, understandable reasons. but I think it is best for
It
everybody.
is cool. I mean, it's cool.
Yes, like I said, both things can be true. It can be
Mhm.
manufactured and feel awesome to them, but it is best for everybody involved to get this out of the way. That being said, it better not F up the actual game. Like, it really cannot happen in a game where the Lakers lose, because even if the moment, like the couple minutes they play together in the grand scheme of things did not affect the outcome of the game, if they lose, particularly in a tight game, I'm just telling you right now, the reaction will be poor.
Well, here's how I think they got to do it. Either you do it early and get it out of the way, because it's not uncommon. Players will play a little bit, and then you go to the G League. G League season starts a little bit after the regular season, stuff like that. So that part's not ready. So you either get it out of the way early, and I think they'll try. You certainly, if it's a 5-point game with, in the third quarter, like, it's gonna be hard to put Bronny in.
You got to do this in the first half. You got to do that. There needs to be enough stuff that happens afterwards to create plausible deniability for the moment, depending on how the game turns out.
It's going to be really hard to work with the criteria. Because you're right. The idea of giving him 6 minutes, 5 minutes, 4 minutes, whatever it is, to sort of do it, and you're minus 13 and whatever, whether he could have, he played fine or not, it doesn't matter. It's gonna be like the Lakers blew a game because they had to put Bronny in for their sideshow, for the Rob Pelinka, LeBron James clutch fueled sideshow to get Bronny. I think and it's just going to stir the resentment. So you can either do that, or, basically try to get it out of the way as quick as you can and just hope there's a game where they're either up or down by 16 with 3.5 minutes to go, and you can put everybody in the game and have that moment. You know what? It will almost be like, oh yeah, maybe we won't even notice that we're down by 16 because we got the Bronny moment. That's what people will talk about the next day, and you use it for that. Or you say, Bronny is going straight to the G League. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. We'll see him again when either everybody is hurt or in March. And so you just know, Bronny is not going to travel with the team. He is not going to be active for games with the big club and all that stuff. And it just becomes the expectation. So he's just going to go play. The problem is going to come if it takes 15 games and you're sort of dragging. He's kind of with the team, but is he going to play? And everybody's just asking when it's going to happen. You're using a roster spot, an active roster spot, and probably don't need it. You're talking about the 15th guy, but maybe you do. It's they need a plan. They need a plan. They need to go into the season with a plan, and they need to execute the plan. Lakers not been good at plans, so we'll see how this goes. In the grand scheme of things, it's a tiny element of what's going to make them successful this season. It's just not anything. It doesn't serve anybody to have it out there the entire.
Right. You just said it's a tiny element, but you don't want it to turn into a big thing.
Yeah.
I mean, I would just send LeBron down to the G League, let him get on the floor for the South Bay Lakers.
Does that count? With that?
I mean, you want to talk about low stakes? Let everyone ease into this.
No, that's true. Bronny could start that game. Yeah. It's not a problem.
Yeah.
Grievous Vasquez. You remember Grievous Vasquez?
Yes.
He had a really interesting comment about LeBron that we will get to on Monday, but it is a fascinating way to frame LeBron and what has both made him so good and also explains a little bit of his longevity, and for me at least, sparks a conversation about how long this might last. So we'll get to that on Monday. Hope everybody has a great weekend. Locked On Lakers on YouTube is where you can go hang out. With over 25,000 subscribers, go check out Locked On NBA. Keeps you updated on everything that's happening around the league. Get all the local experts, part of the Locked On podcast network, your team every day. We'll see everyone Monday.